If you do manage to innovate to the point where you've differentiated yourself sufficiently from the existing model, then you usually wind up getting acquired by the behemoths anyway. And so you've got like a
Yeah.
limited
That's
window.
that's like the exit.
Yeah,
That is the exit, though.
yeah.
I'm a believer in S&P 500, right? Like you can index and hold it and shut up and wait for 30 years. You become a millionaire. I believe in that. But the problem isn't about wealth. The problem is about income, right? You are playing you've been subscribed to wealth strategy when what you need the most is income strategy. If I sell the site, I can sell it for 100K right now. And when I sell it,
What stood out to me about your profile was that you pursue acquisition entrepreneurship. Kind of you mentioned using the buy then build model. Could you talk to me about how you entered into that space?
I wanted to break away from the time and income, right? Because I think that's like one of the trap that we have is we go to good school, we get a good job, and then we work, right? And once you get a bigger paycheck, you upgrade your lifestyle, and then you need a bigger paycheck, right? And so that cycle itself is just not sustainable for me, right? And the thing is that the trigger, and it wasn't like a one moment. It was actually multiple different things. So in 2019, I was fired, by one of my employer, and so that made me realize, yeah, I mean, it's awesome to get a 50% pump in your paycheck, but like, guess what? Like, you didn't create that paycheck. Someone can take it away just as fast, right? And I work in consulting, so that thing is always like a thing in our mind. And I believe this will resonate with a lot of people. Is you might feel lucky to have a big paycheck, but I wonder if you wouldn't worry about is that paycheck is going to come in, like the next month. Like, there's always a question on that, right? And plus, like the time that we live in now, I've been hearing like story that we confirm my thesis back then. So yeah, that's what got me thinking. And then long story short, I try a lot of different things and they all fail because I just simply don't have the time. And so I realized, hey, the limiting factor for me is more about the time, not the money. Even though I didn't come from money. I use the money that I save up, right? So and then I realized, hey, there are businesses that are selling, and there are online businesses that are also selling. Because the thing is, you can buy a franchise, right? I don't know. It was like a trend before to get in the franchise and then you operate it, right? That to me is like another job. And I just like, it doesn't make sense, right? You go from a Mandarin consultant to running a laundromat, right? Like, with all due respect, right? My wife wouldn't approve that. So yeah, and that's how I discover the online acquisition route.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. Largely, I agree with you, or at least what you said resonates. I call that the entrepreneurial mindset, the ability to adapt to external circumstances with variables that you can't control. Like you mentioned, you get this bump up in a paycheck, which you presumably earned. However, there's so many variables there. Maybe your employer has to downsize. Maybe they have to adapt. Maybe they get bought out. There's so many things that it almost doesn't matter. I mean, there is a large element of luck. So that's what I'm about is trying to spread the word and build the network of developing an entrepreneurial mindset, taking these kind of outside insights from one like cross industry knowledge transfer. And you do that to an extent in management consulting, where you're looking at a problem like in an intense way for a short period of time and giving this boost. But this is more, like you mentioned, things are changing and things are going faster, and we're having to do that, take that mindset global.
This totally, I love that. I love the approach. Yeah. But I would say like the trigger was more my wife working event. So her time is like, she needs to be at the location, and she works like longer hour than I do, which is crazy. Right. And she makes less than I did. So it was like a very high intensity, high pressure, and also like a very labor intensity job. Right. Question is like, how do I free her out from that, right? So we can, so she can go do her own thing. And the yeah, like for her, it makes sense, right? Because her opportunity cost is lower, and she wanted to become an entrepreneur. And like she has her own event company startup, and they did like fantastic, right? Because they do event countdown for the government in Hong Kong, for the tours board. They did like millions of dollars, like tens of millions of dollars in revenue per, because like events are huge, right? Like imagine you have to like organize, 100,000 people on the street. It's like a big thing, right? So so the top line revenue is like crazy, right? And we didn't know that, and it takes time for her to build, right? And I know she can do it, because like the event management business is not really a rocket science. But then the question is like, if she just goes off and do this thing, like what is the bridge? There's nothing in between, right? You either like work the I would say a very low ROI job as a event designer. She's a designer. Or you take a chance and take the time, do it with, I don't know, with your partner, and like create a business for yourself, right? That's what she ended up doing. But in between, there's no bridge, and acquisition allowed me to find that bridge, right? And of course, it's not like 100%, right? And I didn't do it I didn't have a large success like on day one. There's a journey on that. So yeah, I kind of want to share my journey, and that's what I'm doing on X, even though I have never like told that story. But I just realized, I didn't realize that was actually like one of the things that I was thinking about, because like event is just crazy. Like she came home late, or like she wake up early, like there's like a 2 a.m. setup or something, because you need to do it before the event starts, right? Which is crazy. And she felt really stuck, because like what are the other options? So I have to find a way, and she doesn't really know online. Like, so it's not like I can buy a online business and let her run it. I have to run it myself. So the question becomes like, where do I find things that I can do really on the side and kind of allow me to, there's like time and location independent, so I can do it when I have time, right? And that was basically the limitation and constraint that forced me into this route, really.
It's always the limitations and constraints that force you to innovate. Sometimes it's the best thing that ever happened to you. Pandemic was, for me, it took me out of the industry that I'd grown accustomed to right before the Olympics, no less, in tourism. And but I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been a unique pivot, and I think that's all of us. I spoke to another gentleman who got laid off as well in the pandemic. I don't know if it's similar to your case, but had got promoted and was in a really good place, earned it, successful career, and then something happened higher up, and strategy change or whatever, and there's that identity crisis for like a few months where you're like, what am I? I worked myself up to an Olympic gold medalist, and now there's no Olympics or whatever. And then all of a sudden you go back, you're still that person. You just basically apply it to the next role, and you realize, whoa, like all my constraints are now lifted. What was a ceiling now is just infinite. So yeah, sometimes it's interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, sometimes for some people, you kind of need that hard pivot, right? Like there's a roadblock that's almost like airdrop in front of you, right? Like what are you gonna do, right? Because like your old route is no longer viable. You just need to, take a sideway, right? You have to. My point is, like when I talk to people on the phone, like one thing that I wanted to like help them with is to create a healthy degree of passive income. So that's something that I talked about. And I think like another middle income trap is the limitation of there's a limitation on what are the financial instruments that you have exposure to, right? So if you think about like what are the things that you can invest in, right? Like for us in Hong Kong, they are usually just limited to 3. If you are good, you have the number 3. Number 1 is property. Like everyone, like Asians like to buy property, right? Like it's kind of like in our blood. And then the second thing is stocks, right? Like everyone talks about stock because like everyone talks about how much money they make. Nobody talk about their losses. Everyone seems to be able to make money in stock. It's crazy. But once you try that, you know what it's really about. And then the third thing is bonds, right? Like bonds, if you're buying like a single bond, you have to be accredited. Usually like 1 million US, right, to begin with. Or you go for funds, right? Like stocks or bond fund, whatever fund, that can be a mixture of it. Those are the thing that you have exposure to usually. Those are the three, right? So excluding bond, maybe just mutual funds, right? And what are their returns, right? Like their return is usually, well, for one, their return, like I'm a believer in S&P 500, right? Like you can index and hold it and shut up and wait for 30 years. You become a millionaire. I believe in that, right? But the problem isn't about wealth. The problem is about income, right? You are playing, you've been subscribed to wealth strategy when what you need the most is income strategy. And what I mean by that is, yeah, if you buy a property, right, with whatever down payment, 30%, 10%, you get a mortgage loan, your net worth, I mean, net off the debt, your net worth should be an increase, right? Assuming the market like goes that, like, with inflation and all that like property is like one of the best anti-inflation wealth move that you can make because it rises with the inflation. So I think most people know that. The problem is most people don't know that is a wealth strategy. That is not a income strategy. Why? Because if you look at your cash flow, it doesn't help you. That is why I say it's not an income strategy.
With acquisition entrepreneurship, one thing that people look for is recurring revenue. And over a certain amount of time, they can track how healthy the company is, has it weathered recessions, etc. What do you look at when you're looking to acquire a company?
Yeah. So when I acquire a company, so let's break it into two parts, right? There's the offline world, which is like the SMB, right? Those are the HVAC, swimming pool, cleaning, those type of business, right? That's the offline world. My world is more of the online world, but I think in terms of what we look at, it's all largely similar, right? I like to say 3 Ps. One is the profit, because unless you are a strategic investor, I would say most people aren't strategic investors. Most people are looking for financial return. So we are financial investors. And so profit has to be number one, right? And then the second thing is whether you have proof to add value, right? Proof as in you have done something before, you have high certainty about how to make this how to make this business work or how to add value. I would say that is the ideal situation, even though that's not how I started, right? I kind of just like taking a plunge into acquiring my first site without even knowing how to code, right? Or know the niche. And then the third thing is you have to have a passion. You can't hold something that you hate.
Well, hopefully not. Same with being an entrepreneur. Like it's better if you have some passion because that's going to be your differentiator that makes you want to innovate, try harder, and outperform someone who's doing it for someone else. I guess many variables there, but I get your point. So how long have you been buying companies?
So I started in late 2019. So it's about 4 years.
And quite a turbulent 4 years. What has that been like? Like, what have you seen over these past 4 years?
Yeah. So from a portfolio standpoint, I think my annualized return is like really approximately 30% per year cash on cash return. It means if you put in $100, you get $30 back per year, right? And actually it's more than that, right? Because I think I put in around like the total amount, and like I also use recycled capital, right? So to acquire more, and that creates a flywheel. So like imagine your $100, you put in $100. I didn't start with $100. I start with 23K. That's like my first site, and it returned my capital to me in like 6 or 7 months for the whole thing because the market was just crazy. I bought in public. It was late. It was like 2020, early 2020. Like going into early 2020 when Trump was president and when there was a lot of like discussion around like a lot of interest in the US politics, and that's kind of like where my site benefited from. So it was just crazy, right? The earning that I bought was more for $800 per month, and it just go like crazy. And I did some improvement. I didn't know I didn't know which idea will work for sure, but I tested a couple of one, and I needed a developer to help me because I can't code. And anyway, the technical side of thing is I tried a lot of different things, but the site was like giving me like 4, 5, 6,000 per month. So it very quickly just pay off the initial capital for me in the first 6, 7 months after I acquired them. And so that's like my first victory of online business acquisition. And back then I didn't have I was open. I didn't have a thesis in terms of what kind of business that I was looking for. So I didn't differentiate between, like, today you will hear about terms like, are you buying a content business, right? Content website or a niche site versus if you're buying a SaaS or you're buying an app, right? Or you're buying a lead gen business, right? So I didn't have the full sort of like as much understanding as I do now for those categories. I was simply looking for profit and something that I am interested in enough, and also also I have the confidence that I can either learn to how to operate it.
I think that's key. It sounded at first like there was a large amount of luck, but after hearing you out there, I think a lot of it was also that kind of confidence in yourself, this fearlessness of just entering and I'll solve it. Did some of that come from your consulting background where you just knew that whatever the problem was, you'd figure out a solution for it?
I don't think so. So in my experience, I think consultants, like strategy consultants, they think about strategy, right? They think about selection. So they keep thinking about like which is the best strategy, which strategy is the most optimal, right? And there's very little action, very little execution. So I would say where I fell short was execution, right? I tried actually 5 actual business and a few like investment ideas, right? I tried a couple of things that didn't work out, like a couple of business that didn't work out and a couple of investment instrument that didn't work out. That's why I mentioned, bond fund, stock, like those kind of things. I have like horrible, failure story to share on why it didn't work for me. It could work for someone. It clearly worked for someone. It just didn't work for me. So yeah, back to the point, right? I was very lucky because I know the market is going to be very good in 6 to 12 months. How could I, right? I couldn't. And it was a highly risky bet, right? Because I was buying into something that I didn't even know, right? I'm not a coder. I don't know anything about website. I didn't even know what the heck is HTML, right? Like what was the convention? So I didn't know from the technical side of things. So I was just like, but I think I can figure it out. So I decided to, and it's something that I can run on the side, right? So I almost had no option, right? I can't really run a franchise, right? I can't. I look into a couple of businesses in Hong Kong where we have like an after school education business. So you know how I think are you calling from the US?
Well,
I
right
forgot to
now
ask you.
Canada, but North America.
Yeah, like in North America, I believe like if you are like, if you go to an elite school, there are like, after school classes, like, things that help you, or like SAT classes, right? That help you prep for SAT. Even though in the US, I think it's more like online
In
basis.
Korea, they call them hagwons. In Japan, they call them jukku. What do they call them in Hong Kong?
It's called 补習. 補習 means like you're beating up your study. That's basically what I meant. Yeah. So yeah, I looked into some of those business and I realized like, and this is similar pain point for people who are looking to buy a small like SMB, right? Most of these are jobs in disguise. Once you see through it, like of course the seller, if they're good, they will position it as something that you really don't have to do anything. Like the students there, or the customers are there. You just need to and also the teachers are there, right?
And I guess the margins aren't high enough to bring in a general manager or someone to run it for you.
Well, even if the margin has high enough, like let's say, I think for the stuff that I look into, yeah, no, it's a question of scale, right? If you buy a business that's big enough, you have the scale to afford maybe like a general manager. This is more like a general point, right? Like you hire a general manager to run, let's say, your laundry mat for you without even knowing what you should be monitoring. How you, yeah, it's a highly risky move because you are really relying on the guy that you hire to run the business for you. Without you, if you don't know anything about that, right? You shouldn't even get involved in that. I would just say, because like you don't even know how to manage that, right? What does good look like? You wouldn't know, right? Unless you are someone, yeah, fine. If you're someone, maybe like if you're someone who are stupid like me, who think you can learn on the way in, yeah, maybe you can do it. But I would say that you have to find a business where you can really learn on your own time, right? Like for me, my website, like the beauty of that is I didn't know how to run a website. Yeah. But as soon as I changed the ownership to my name, money just came in. I didn't have to do anything because it was Essence, right? The site my first site that I bought was earning from Essence. So as soon as I changed the ownership to me, the domain to me, my Essence account was registered under my name. The money came in. I didn't even have to do anything at all. And Essence is not the best monetization tool in our world. So yeah.
Are you acquiring globally or like regionally?
No, I acquire globally. I would say one of the criteria that I used to have is I prefer to buy from someone who doesn't know, like who doesn't strike me as someone who's good at SEO. Like I'll prefer to get it from someone who's not too savvy about like the operation side of things. So that's where I might still have some room for improvement to improve on the business.
Yeah, low hanging fruit. And then how do you integrate your new acquisitions into your existing portfolio?
Nowadays I would look for things that I can reuse. So today I have free sites, like free websites that are generating income. So I made a couple investments into different things. But like today, I still own free websites, and I have a VA that is more someone that is on my, so like I pay monthly to become my full-time VA, and then I have like other resources like developers and writers. I'll tap them when I need them. So how do I integrate them? I would basically, you have some of the tools like keyword analytics tools like Ahrefs, or some of the paid tools for managing your social media or managing your content. You have like keyword tools like Ahrefs, Server. What else do I have? So a couple of things like ChatGPT. Those are the things that I would consider. Those are like my tech stack to run the business. So I will look for deals where I can make use of those tools. Right. Let's say if I have Tailwind. Tailwind is a tool where you use to manage your Pinterest, like your pins. Right. So I would want to be like the site that I buy. I would consider, hey, would I be able? And it's all part of the pre-acquisition where you're thinking about what are some of the quick wins that you can implement that will help you generate, like get that money back as soon as you can. Right. So and then you will own the site with confidence. Right. Like you feel much more comfortable with owning the site. Right. And with online, the thing with online is like things can change like very quickly, right? Give you an example. Zip David is a listed company that owns speedtest.com. Speedtest.com is kind of like a website that I would love to buy. Before, I would love to buy because like when you want to know your speed test at home, what do? People search like speed test, right? And they will go to like speedtest.com, right? The problem is if you type in speed test in Google, the first search result is Google.
That's right. I was just going to say, that's what I always use.
That's Google, right? So Google just like freaking like stole the business from that, right? But of course, like speed test, they will do more, right? I think the consumer part is gone. I think the consumer part is impacted by Google's genius move to do that, right? But there's a B2B element to speed test, right? The business is not just a site where you tell the consumer how fast the internet speed is, right? There's like a B2B element to that as well. The point I'm trying to make is with online, you have to think about how fast, how easy, and how fast would that be for someone to do the same thing that you're doing.
And if you do manage to innovate to the point where you've differentiated yourself sufficiently from the existing model, then you usually wind up getting acquired by the behemoths anyway. And so you've got like a limited window.
That's like the exit.
Yeah.
That is the exit though.
Yeah.
There's some people aiming for that exit, right? They position themselves as like a missing piece for some of the player, right?
Yeah,
like VC, the PE shops will have like a vertical integration play, like roll up, or like a horizontal competency roll up, right? You either roll up by competency or you roll by the vertical, right? Like health, clinic, whatever. That's a vertical. And the good thing is like that you can, but it's also a bet, right? You position yourself as a likely acquisition target, right? You do that from that perspective. It's gonna put your business in a good place. I would say it's a good practice to think about how you're gonna sell that.
Have you thought about that for your own company, your own like portfolio? Or do you have like a exit strategy in mind, or are you right now just seeing where it goes?
Yeah, I do. I do have a exit strategy for some of the site. I think for let's call it like the niche site. It's going through a lot of changes. If you look at the multiples in the industry, it used to be, I think the multiple has like increased. So now it's like 3x to 7x, right? Some of the contents I suspect that's exaggerated, but that's what the data said from like flipper.com, right? They did a study on the site that they have and the average multiple, like how they distribute. And so, yeah, I would say that the industry is going through a lot of changes. And one of the sites that I do want to like exit once it get to like a good rebrand, like a stabilized stage, then I will package it up and then sell it. The other ones I don't want to sell it. One of the factors that I think about is like I would say when you are exiting, divesting, you have to think about what's next for your capital, right? So if I sell the site, I can sell it for 100K, right now. And when I sell it, it depends, right? If I know for a fact that like the market is gonna have a big change, and I feel like the business is not going to like, that's like the worst kind of reason to sell, right? The business is gonna tank, so like it's like a musical chair. You want to sell it before you did. That's like a horrible reason. And so the way I like to sell is I like to put it into a growth trajectory where there's like a clear track of growth, and the owner will be happy to get that. So I deliver on my promise, right? So that will be like the best way to sell it. But as the point I was making was, let's say you get the 100K back, right? And how are you going to use it? Like if you don't have a clear use of your capital, you should think twice before you make that move, right? For barring the really horrible reason that you want to just like sell the bomb to someone else before it explodes, right? So excluding that, then it becomes, so for me, let's say if I can sell 100K, right? Where am I going to find a home for that 100K that's going to generate say 30% cash on cash return? If I don't have a clear target in sight, then I would delay that decision. Basically, that's how I think about that. And the thing is, I don't need to. I have enough acquisition. I have enough dry powder right now. I don't need to divest my asset in order for that purpose. So if I want to acquire a site that meets my investment criteria, I can right now. I don't need to divest in order to do that.
Well, that right there sounds pretty wise. So basically, you've put yourself in a position where you can be a good person, basically. Because I think if you, let's say, I'd rather you hold this exploding bomb rather than me. That's a short-term strategy, because then I've burned whatever good capital I might have. Like in 10 years, you could become a billionaire. And it's like, oh, I'd love to do business. You're like, no, you didn't treat me well 10 years ago. Or you don't know like what's going to happen. So it's better, even selfishly, to try to do right by by the people you do business with. People get desperate sometimes, and obviously we can understand to an extent. But like you said, always have like enough dry powder so that you're not forced into that position where you have to make compromising decisions.
Exactly. I think that's the whole point, right? You wanna put yourself in a position where this is like kind of like a high roll, right? Where you're not desperate, where you don't need something to work, right? This is also one thing that was mentioned in the psychology of money, right? If you need something to work for you, you are in a very fragile position, because that has to work, right? If not, then you're done. And it depends on the life stages, right? I have 2 kids, right? If I don't, then yeah, I can start over, but I can't take my family down with me, right? So that's like the consideration.
Well, yeah, your thinking understandably would change, but I smile because it's funny. Like I agree with you, but at the same time, what we said earlier still holds true, where the constraints also drive that innovation. Sometimes by having your
Yeah,
back to the wall,
of
you
course.
discover that you could fly.
Exactly.
And so
Exactly. Yeah.
both
Yeah.
things are true.
Yeah. The constraint will make you more creative,
Yeah.
right? If you have no constraint, then
But
where are you going to start, right?
but I would
The
say,
obstacle is the path.
yeah, I agree with that. But I'd say try not to have that be your strategy. Try not to have like,
Of course, like
I'm
yeah,
gonna put
you don't
myself.
want to get like
Yeah,
burn the bowl,
I
right?
was
Like you don't want.
I was talking to someone earlier who they were trying to like build a business. They ran out of their savings after a certain amount of time. I don't know, 6 months or a year, and then they had
Yeah,
that big breakthrough. And I was wondering,
yeah.
because of that constraint, the obstacle is the path, like you said. What if you just started without money? Like, would that a 6 month point actually have come in month one? You never know. But yeah, it just
Yeah,
I
you never know. And I would say like that that's also like that's also where big breakthrough come from, right? Because like
mm,
you really cannot afford to lose, then you must win, right? Like I've heard like stories like that. And also like to the extent of what I just said, like put yourself in a position where you don't need to win. There's a downside for that philosophy as well.
yeah.
Like, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, like he wrote an article on like how to become successful.
Uh,
There are like 13 points. One of the point is you don't want to wait too long. You don't want to make yourself too comfortable, because when you are in that position, there's no need for you to do anything anymore.
not
So
just.
like,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no. That's basically the point. Yeah,
Well, good point. And I was going to say too. I mean, we all seek comfort, but on balance, I think we need to seek
yeah,
balance, because anything from comfort is discomfort. So it's like it's kind of a bad place to be, because everything is painful. Like you go left, you go right, it's pain. You're not afraid of discomfort, and because that's also where
exactly.
all the growth comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Well, I think that's probably a good place to end the conversation, but I could talk to you for another hour. It's really interesting. Thanks for sharing your perspective. And, I really look forward to seeing you grow, not just on X, but, globally with your acquisition entrepreneurship.
yeah. Thanks. And I really enjoy talking with you. And I think like yeah, I it's just so different from talking to you in new person. So I think it's like I really like the fact that you have find a system to do what you're doing right now on a consistent basis. So that is something very hard for me, right? Because I don't know anything about that. So love to see that, and I hope you can continue on that. And also, like, because before I know you on this, I was like, to be honest, right? I thought you're like I wasn't sure if you are like in another like scam account or something like that, right? So like I don't know, right? And so it's just like yeah, very
I'm a
and
human
yeah
being.
no yeah, of course, like that this is cool.